Welcome to Cosmic Compass, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this morning. I'm really excited this group that has joined us live. Thank you so much. I can see all your beautiful faces from afar. From afar. All right, as usual, we're going to start with some breathing just to connect and be present. If you're in a position where you can't do that right now, that is fine. You can just bring your awareness inward. And I like to close my eyes just because it helps me ground and connect. So if that is something you would like to join me in, we'll begin with that. And I'm just going to breathe and encourage you to breathe and expand your belly as you breathe. And on the exhale, letting sound come right out. And again, breathing in, expanding the belly. And on the exhale, and if it feels comfortable for you, feeling the earth beneath your feet as you breathe in, expanding the belly. And exhaling. And one more time as we honor those who have come before, feeling the earth's energy rising to meet us. Breathing in, expanding the belly, feeling the support. And when you're ready, exhaling. And just taking a minute to thank yourself for being here. And if you're listening to this later, thank yourself for listening. So this morning we will be pulling some cards, and I do have a little bit I want to say about the astrology first, and then we'll pull cards, and then we'll get to our wonderful guest. So we have a new moon this week. It is it just feels like a really special new moon. It does not have an eclipse. It is a new moon that allows us to deepen and remind ourselves of all of that Pisces energy. And we do have some Pisces with us, actually quite a number of Pisces with us today. And it's perfect timing for the book that we're going to talk about with our wonderful author this morning. Um, that watery energy, that oceanic energy, that knowing and compassion and intuition that flows through the Pisces. This is what we really want to deepen into right now. This is where we are being called. And because there's been so much focus, again, totally understandably, on the Saturn Neptune in Aries, and the fact that many planets are going to be going into fire and air signs, we want to remember the water. We want to remember what the water brings us. We want to remember the fluidity and the depth that is something that the Pisces energy knows a lot about. And then, of course, the creative energy, right? So Pisces is highly creative. Um, there's a way of being for Pisces that doesn't know any difference. So they don't even know that they're creative sometimes because they just don't realize that not everybody's like them. So we get to enjoy that energy with them this time of year. And the new moon is the 18th here in the United States. It is definitely the 19th in the United Kingdom, and a lot of you are over there. So the energy of the week leads us into the equinox. So we are shifting seasons, and depending on where you are, you might not even really know what season it is right now because the weather is not following its normal patterns. So as we move into this time, we are going to ask for some support from our cards and from our ancestors. You'll remember what I wrote last week about being reminded from a very powerful tarot teacher, Z Budapest, that I had an opportunity to spend some time with when I lived in Santa Cruz. And she reminded us that in Eastern Europe, when you're using the tarot, you are hearing from your ancestors. So, given that that is a theme for today, we are going to ask that our collective ancestors offer us some ideas of how can we navigate this week. So I'm tapping, clearing. And our first card today is a card that I have been seeing a lot of, which I'm not unhappy to see, of course. And here we go. The Knight of Pentacles. And again, as always, this is for you to deepen into. You don't need to know, quote unquote, what it means. Just what do you feel? What do you notice? I can feel the horse people saying, I notice how the horse is lifting its leg in a particular way. Aha! And this card is making a definite impact in our community. I'm seeing as other people are pulling it as well. So again, what do you see? What do you feel? What do you notice? What's the story here? What's the story that comes? All right, that's our first card. And our second card for today is this card. And again, what's the story here? What's your story? What do you feel? What do you notice? Every time I do this, I see a little bit different energy in the card. I notice a detail that I might not have noticed before. So even if you don't know exactly what this means, honor what's moving through you, honor the energy of the card. And for some of you, this might be literal, but for some of us, it might be something a little different. Okay, and our last card for the week. And again, we're just asking for support for navigating. And our last card. And for those of you listening, the first card was the Knight of Pentacles. The second card was the Sun. And the third card is the Four of Wands. And what I love about her cards is there's definitely stories, there's movement, there's action in all of these cards, right? So you can really see how they might work together for support. Okay, in the follow-up, I will put the affirmations that Chris Ann from the Light Seers that she creates. And if I remember, I'll put some journal questions in there as well. So you'll have an opportunity to dive in, deep in, connect. But I'm so excited. I want to get to our conversation. So forgive me for not going into great detail. I will say Mercury is still retrograde, so you all know what to do with that. It's a great time, especially with it in Pisces. Go deeper. Dreams can be intense right now. I don't know when they're not, but okay. But they could be intense. So give yourself some time in the mornings to process, write, journal, take a walk, listen to what's coming through. There's always something, there's always something being shared. There's always something coming through. And now I'm so excited. So I am going to spotlight our guest, but I'm also going to introduce her. So Michelle St. Romain and I met a Saturn cycle ago, which if you read the newsletter, you could have figured it out because I actually put a clue in there. But if you want to put in what you think a Saturn cycle is, you can put it in the chat. And so the reason I say it that way, Michelle, is because Saturn really represents our work, and it represents the cycle of my kid, little Isabel's there. So having the opportunity to know you during a whole cycle of a really profound energy that allows us to bring things into form, that brings us structure. So Michelle Saint Romain is many things, but first and foremost, she is my friend. And we have been on journeys together through the healing arts and beyond, and have lived a lot of life in this entire Saturn cycle, which nobody has put in the chat how many years that is yet, but that's okay. That's all right. But you are here, Michelle, because you have a debut novel that you have been working on for a while and diligently for the last, particularly the last 6 months, has been an intense time with this book. And I will just say that Michelle is not only a writer, she is an advocate for, yes, very good. Very good, Karen. Good job. 29 years. Okay. That Michelle is an advocate for children, animals, women, people everywhere around the world. Michelle has been a writer, a teacher, someone definitely and deeply engaged in making this world a better place, has started a nonprofit. There's so many things you do and have done. And now we are speaking to you as the author of this incredible book, which I, I have to say, I've read this book so fast because it is so good. The song, it's actually not the song, it's Song of Belonging by Michelle Saint Romain. And Michelle, thank you so much for being here. I have a lot I want to share, but I'd like to just let you jump in and say hello before I jumble it all up with my thoughts here.
Okay, great. Well, hello. I am so thrilled to be here. And yes, it is pretty remarkable the amount of time we've been together. And I do want to shout out to Sharon, who was with us when we met that very long ago. And it's interesting because I haven't thought about this book in terms of that period.
Mm,
But for various reasons now I am thinking about it because
yeah.
that time when we met really was a time when I think that the ancestors, my grandmother's great grandmother's aunts, who've always been with me, and I feel like I felt a sense of connection to their stories. But at that time when we met, it felt like a real opening of no kidding, like no
Right.
kidding, this is
It's
part of the deal.
true. It's true. The no kidding part was very clear at
No
that
kidding, it
moment
was
in
very
time.
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting all these years later to be here. And Sharon, I do want to just say it's wonderful to have you here as well.
Yay. So one of the reasons that this is actually a profound celebration of a cycle is because this book really is a, and again, this is my interpretation. Every reader gets to have their own, but it's very definitely a book of ancestral healing, in my opinion. There is no doubt in my mind as I'm reading it, the healing energy that is flowing through this book. And I want to make this clear that this is a book of fiction. And before we go too much deeper into that, Michelle, would you be willing to share as an author, you know, how you've how it works? Clearly there's a connection that you must feel to your ancestors that flows through here. I can feel it. But how is this different than, say, a memoir or you know what I'm asking, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's quite different than her. So it is a work of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much inspired by, and I'm very, very clear about that this book is inspired by the stories and the energy, uh, the wisdom and the mysteries of my ancestors in French Louisiana, which go back on both sides, my mother's and father's, many generations. I think on both sides, I may be wrong, but I think on both sides we can trace back to the 1700s in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And so the roots are deep. And of course, there's lots and lots of stories. There's lots there. So I stayed very much focused on what I know of my French culture. And I have always just been fascinated, particularly by the stories of the women. And so the book, this story really focuses on that matrilineal path. And I've not seen much of that in fiction. There's a couple of things I think that have been pretty good around that. Steel Magnolias focuses on
Right.
women's power, as well as the Yaya sisterhood. And this is a different version and a different kind of piece. So to your question about fiction and memoir, if I were writing memoir, then I would really be honing in on a specific theme in my own life and writing very clearly and specifically about my experiences. That this is not that. This is all kinds of things, from stories on both sides of the family, certainly things from my own experiences, things that other people have shared with me, from reading, from daydreaming, from working with people who know what it is to write a solid story and helping with the craft of fiction. And then I just let it all come out. So it is not truth in any way. And it's very much inspired by the themes that I think were important to me to discover and explore here.
Yeah, thank you so much for making that distinction, because I know um, this is written so beautifully, it's crafted so beautifully that it feels very real. And that's something that I love about literature, right? Is that when we dive in, we are in a world, and this world feels very real to me, even though I think there is a genre, you and I talked about this, the magical realism
Yeah,
genre. Can you
yeah,
speak to that just a moment, like just for a moment, about what that means so that everyone knows?
sure. So magical realism is a genre in fiction where what what people think of as magic happens in a real world. So in
Mhm.
fantasy, a magical world or an alternative world is created, and people have all kinds of abilities or whatever happens. That's fiction. I mean, that's fantasy.
Yeah.
And then there's, kind of traditional fiction in the real world where things happen. And
Okay.
magical realism is a kind of place in between, where it's set in the world that we know it right here. And magical-ish things, that's the word we use, happen, and they're accepted as part of the world, but they're it's an important part of the story. So, for example, Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. Alice Hoffman is is a master of magical realism. The real masters of this, Isabel Allende, others, it's a lot
Yes.
in the South American
Hmm.
the literary canon.
Hmm.
But that's basically what it is.
Okay. And I just have to let everyone know. I think my life is magical realism,
Yeah,
because for me, this is real life. So
right.
that I think that's why it feels so real. And so, why don't Michelle, why don't you say, I mean, I can read the back if you want, or you can just share what this book is about. And,
Sure.
yeah.
I want to say one last thing about that. I love all the writing of Alice Hoffman, and I always felt like, oh my God, she's writing about me and normalizing it.
Yeah.
And so I actually went to a writing conference to meet her, and that's when I started writing this book. And I was in line and I got up to meet her and I just started crying. And she looked at me and I said, I'm sorry, I'm really a grown up. And they said, well, I'm going to start crying. And I walked up and I just
Oh,
said, I want to thank you for writing what you did, because you've normalized my life.
mhm.
And there was a lot
Now
more
I'm
to
gonna cry.
yeah, there was more to that experience too, but it was a really wonderful moment. And then I
Oh,
really knew how much I wanted to add to this type of writing for
yes.
people who are
Yeah.
struggling. So I'll jump to what it's about. It's about a young woman named Alice. Well, the trajectory of the story. This young woman named Alice, she's 28, and so Saturn's return time.
Yeah. See,
She's
isn't that
20,
interesting?
that was planned.
Okay.
So she's 28, and she has been having kind of experiences her whole life that she's shoved away, and then essentially she meets this point where she can't ignore them anymore.
Yeah.
So she moves into this new apartment in Berkeley. She's lived there for a long time. Now, she grew up in Louisiana and has two sisters, and there's two more books coming, one about each of the sisters. So this is Alice's story, and she's the youngest, and she wants to be a journalist, has all these plans for her writing career. Mm-hmm. And she's got this big, great job. And she moves into a new apartment, and she wakes up a little disoriented from being in the new place. And she starts unpacking, and she comes across a jewelry box that her great grandmother had given her when she was 7 years old, when her great grandmother died. And she has not opened the box in like 10 years. She's been busy. And she opens it. She rereads the letter that's in it and looks at the objects in it. And essentially, it's kind of Pandora's box. And then things begin to happen, starting immediately. And what happens is she's having her great grandmother's memories, but she doesn't know that's what's happening. She does not understand that these are not her own memories, that they're actual memories. And then she's got to make sense of it. And then it starts to really weave itself and interject itself with her current life, where she has to really make choices about the path she's going to live.
Yes.
And then it dual timelines. So we go back and forth between her story and the great grandmother's story, mm-hmm. where the reader is learning about the story of what happened and this unfinished grief and more that Alice is working towards. And so the reader and Alice kind of at different times.
It's really well done. And I mean, just aside from the plot arc, which by the way, this is what I was so excited to share this. This is the kind of book that the plot is moving along so easily and quickly that I'm reading really quickly because I want to know what happens next. I mean, we know from the beginning, we are aware that there is a dual timeline. This is very well crafted in the book. And the part about this book, or the thing about this book that really has moved me, is not only is the plot really powerful, and like you said, it's really focused on women's experiences, women's power, the repression of women's power, the abuse of power over women, and then women finding their own power to bring forward into the world to literally find their place of belonging, but also to help particularly the creatures of the sea, the wisdom keepers of the sea, but also other beings on this planet. That being said, I was telling Michelle earlier that it's so well written that I need to read it again because it's poetry. There is magic in the way these words are woven together. And part of that is art, part of that is you, Michelle, but part of that is also the craft of writing. And I don't know if you want to speak to that or if we want to dive into the book a
I
little.
just want to say thank you because that's really kind. This was a struggle. I've been writing poetry forever. Mm-hmm. That was my, I did get a master's in creative writing in college, and it was poetry. I've always written short form. And doing this was a challenge, and I gave myself the challenge. Like, let's see what happens here. And I started this book on Mother's Day, 2018, 8 years ago. Ooh. And there's a story behind that, but I won't go into that too. And so it's 8 years, and it was hard. And I threw it away over and over and over and stopped and done. And then it would fly out of the trash can metaphorically and come back to me. And Ellen, my wife, would be like, yeah, no, yeah, come on, go back. And yeah, I knew you were going to keep writing it because and then there was a point where I thought, okay. And again, you and Sharon remember this from when, we were all young, sweet little things 30 years ago. Then there was a point where I knew I don't get to die until I write this, right?
That's you've even said those words.
Yeah. I don't get to, and it's not like I'm trying to here, but it was really clear, like, okay, then just do it. So then because I have such incredible respect for good writing, mm-hmm. then I really wanted to do it as well as I could. So I really then dedicated time and energy to study with masters of literary fiction as well as I could, and to take, I did a one program and a couple of residencies, and still, because Toni Morrison, beloved, is where I'm aiming.
Yeah.
Nowhere going to get anywhere near it. Of course, it has always fallen short. So I just want to say thank you for your very kind words.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I have to say a couple of things about that. This conversation could go on for years, but we'll do our best to keep it to our time frame. As I'm reading this, I texted Michelle and I said, "Do you have a copy of The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison?" Because for whatever reason, that book is what keeps, I know you just said Beloved, which is obviously a different book, but there's something about the style of the writing or something in here. And I can't find my copy of The Bluest Eye, but I feel Toni Morrison with you. So that energy of someone that is your North Star, right? Someone you admire, someone that you want to write as well as someday, perhaps. But I'm feeling it already. So
Well,
just letting
thank
you
you.
know.
Long ago, somebody said something, and I thought, oh my God, okay, I'm all done. And I'm just doing more. And I feel very grateful because another author who wrote a blurb about it said something about Willa Cather and the way Willa Cather.
Oh, I saw that. And I love Willa Cather, right?
And so I say this only because it feels surreal, and I just am very grateful that I'm just grateful for anyone who is finding a sense of connection.
Well, I love that. And we could go off into a literary
Right.
realm here. And I do want to say something else. So, Michelle is very humble. While she's been writing this book, she has her own business. She has multiple contracts. She and her wife have 3 children. There is plenty going on in her life beyond writing. And so, Michelle, I, as your friend, will say to you, well done, because this is something that it isn't easy. And yet it is something it is your path and it has flowed in many ways because of your devotion and your dedication. So it's important for me to say that because you're not going to say it. So I'm going to say it. You're too humble to say it, but I'm here to say that. That said, everyone, what I would like to do, there's a lot of themes in this that I actually, we want to read some passages to you because it is so beautiful. But I do want to say that this idea of belonging, Michelle, I would like to hear from you first. I'm very touched by I guess I don't want to give away the plot. And this is why I'm leaning into Michelle a lot because she knows how to talk about her book without giving everything away. Whereas I would probably give it all away. So, belonging, would you like to share about what that means for you?
Um, you know what? In answer, how about if I
Yes.
just read a couple of lines
Yes, please.
in the beginning?
Okay.
So there's a little poetry in this, the beginning, the end, a little bit of kind of poetic writing in the middle that come from the ancestors. So I will say that the book, while it's the ancestors also speak.
Yes.
So and there was a point where I was going to have the sea otters speak, and then I just couldn't quite get there. But I still have time to write some more books. But
Yeah. And I have a
so
story for you about sea otters, which we could talk about now
we'll
or
talk about
later.
that.
Okay.
So what I just want to say too, because we're alluding to that. So two
Mhm.
things. On the cover is a spiral
Yes.
with stars behind it, and it's the color too of the ocean. So this book is so have envisioned these books. It's interesting. So this one is water. The
Mhm.
next one will be earth, and the third one will be fire and air. This one is very much about water and memory and intuition
Mhm.
um, and all kinds of things beyond that. So you can read it, and I'd love to hear from any readers about what you get from that. There's lots of water imagery, the rivers and waterways of Louisiana, and the oceans and seas all over the world are
Mhm.
kind of their own character.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that Alice's work takes her to some work with animals of the ocean, where the animals begin to kind of be messengers for her around what's happening to the environment. So this book also kind of confronts what we're doing to the earth.
Yes, very much so.
And what we haven't shared is that the past story and what you read from the very back cover of the book. So the past story is set in 1934 in a rural Louisiana town on a river, and where the death of a young child, a mysterious death of a young girl, tears open this French community and is left hanging for generations. So the past story is her mother, Grace, writing to her daughter who has passed away just weeks after, and Lily was 7 years old when she passed away. And she's writing to her daughter who is deceased, trying to make sense of it. And then you see how it's woven together. So when we get to this idea of belonging, it is the ultimately, I hope what people get from it is the sense we all truly belong. And that can sound very trite, but the bigger sense, really, we all belong, that really we are part of this enormous tapestry. There is no accident, I believe, of who we are right now and why we're here. And what I believe is it goes forward and backwards. It goes to the things we can't see. So there's imagery and stories of like the way in the family, there's this sense of belonging and this sense of like knowing that goes all the way through, and communication. And then we get to the animals and that they belong. And this idea too, there's a lot of kind of that place between the worlds where Alice is forced to kind of stand and listen.
Yes.
Because it's not going to leave her alone. And so I don't really write about this, not hugely, it comes in little bits, but where I was very particular about the sea mammals I chose. Well, they chose me. That's the truth.
That is the truth.
But they're ones that live on water and land. So they also live between the worlds. So there's a lot of that. So what I want to share is just so when the very beginning of the book is this small piece of poetry that I'll share. And it sets the tone and speaks, I think, I hope, to the sense of belonging, and that we look to the past to find our place. And it's all these puzzle pieces have to connect. We are part of this big tapestry. And if we find our place, well, we all belong here. And it's important that we find that place. All right. So our ancestors' memories live inside of us, lining the cells of our own perceptions. Our lives are mirrors of their loves and jagged wounds, their longings and unsung joy. What are we to do with this blessed, weighted gift? So that opens the story, and is Alice's task, and I believe ours.
I think so. And this is one of the reasons why I'm just so thrilled to have you here today. Because one of the things that we are all doing right now is we are healing from and with ancestral wounds, griefs, challenges, celebrations as well. We can heal with the celebrating with our ancestors, of course. But there is something very exquisite about the knowing that we carry this with us in ourselves, and that we are here living lives because of our ancestors. And then the knowing that there is a flow of gifts that travel through, and sometimes those gifts are tucked away. And that's something that happens in the book. And I think that that is something that a lot of us can relate to, is needing to tuck away some of the extra special gifts that we have because they might not fit in, or we might feel afraid to share those gifts. And I certainly know that Alice is, I think, a powerful representation of a lot of people, a lot of women who come from a long line of very gifted women and men, but there is definitely a matrilineal component to this book. But how do you access those gifts when other ancestors have shoved them literally in drawers, in boxes? And that's a deep question.
To that, what I want to share is it was important to me in this story to touch on this piece that I believe, we all come from an earth-based culture. We all come from ancestors
Mhm.
who knew how to live in with the earth and with each other. And some of us have to go farther back,
Mhm. That's
and
important.
some of us have very tattered histories and present time,
Yeah.
to say the least, around cultural ways of handling this kind of knowing that is not linear, that's not
Mhm.
clearly of the mind and what we can see and touch. And it was important to me that at this time when there's so much happening of opening up
Mhm.
wisdom traditions all over the world, it was important to me that Alice learned to go back to her own culture,
Yeah.
her own Western European culture, to find the answers, not find it in another culture's ancestors or traditions, but
Mhm.
in her. So she does, as you know, there are characters in the book, one from Hawaii and one from Ireland, which is also part of her heritage,
Mhm.
who are kind of like guides for her, but they
Mhm.
tell her, go back to your own family, your
Mhm.
own stories and your own roots, because that's where your answers are.
Yes. I'd like to say a couple things about that. So there's a character in here named Tutu Amelia,
Yeah.
and I was struck by that passage where she tells Alice,
Mhm.
you will find your ancestors. You just need to go, you need to find those gifts and you need to go back further than you think you know.
Yes.
That was brilliant because I think a lot of us think, oh, well, if my mother, my grandmother didn't or did, we stop there. But the great grandmothers and that going back further and further, that is a powerful reminder. And we could probably have some stories about some great aunts or great grandmothers or, um, that had some pretty powerful gifts that might not have been passed on, or other people might not have wanted to pass them on, because of safety reasons. In a lot of cases, it was because of safety. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I'm dedicated to is let's bring back all our gifts.
Mhm.
Because right now, as you said so eloquently, the earth needs us. This is not about us. This book, it's Alice's story, it's Grace's story, it's Lily's story, it's, all the stories of the women. But ultimately, it's about the earth and the healing of the earth through us.
It's the earth, and even in writing this, how much I've come to see. I don't even see a separation anymore between the earth and us, and the
That's so
animals and the
cool.
spirits. Like,
Yeah.
really, in writing this,
Yeah.
uh, we are just this one great web of being,
Yeah.
you know, and the lines can get blurry even between where one starts and so,
I love this. I really want to read something. I'm going to read
okay,
something. Okay.
okay,
All right. So I'm going much further into the book, but this was a passage. I don't think it's going to give anything away, but I felt like for our community here, these words rang like this is our anthem. Okay. So we're in the middle of the book, and Alice is in a conversation with a character, Aunt Annie, and Tutu Amelia. So there, she's in I'm on page 205, Michelle, just in case you're wondering.
and
Um,
if I could give a teeny little,
yes, go for it.
after you say what you want to say, I'll say something about this book.
Well, okay, that's just she's in a conversation with these two women in present day, which is 2019 in the book. Okay.
Yeah.
What else do you want to say?
Okay, and just that she's just recently met these two grandmothers who are the ones who actually kind of lead her to this part of the piece of the environment and caring for animals. And but what I want to share is that this passage, I was driving one day and it started to kind of just come through my and the first line, everything is singing, came to my and I literally had to pull over because I felt like if I didn't, the steering wheel was going to get turned for me. And I pulled over and wrote this passage. And I was earlier in the book and I didn't know where it was going to land. And I sent it to a writing partner. And it's funny, she said, I can see this being someone's Instagram post one day. So,
That we
and this was
mind.
years
No.
ago, and I thought, oh, it's not ever going to even get published, but I kind of like this.
Yeah.
And I printed it and had it up on my wall for a couple of more years as I was writing, and then it finally found its place. And who was saying? I didn't even know who was saying. So,
I have chills. Now, I did not know this, but I did mention to Michelle before we started this live that I wanted to read this passage. So then she told me that story and I said, you've got to tell that story because I mean, this spoke to me. So I'm going to read. I'm going to little story time for everyone. All right. Okay. So I'll just start. Everything is singing, Alice. You know this, yes? Tutu Amelia spoke now softly. The moon and stars, whales and dolphins, all of the tiny creatures and flowers around us, even scientists are learning this now. Everything is singing. We only need to stop and listen. Not everyone can hear the songs, so those of us who do must share what we hear. The song lines of the Aboriginal people in Australia, the drumbeat of the ancient hula, the whispers in the wind blowing by, all of it is showing us the proper way to live, to be in alignment with all of creation. The songs are always leading us into the rhythm of living in sync with everything else. In Hawaii, we say malama pono, which means to care for the things we love, to live in alignment with what is right, what is truly important. Listen to the thrum of the ocean waves and follow what you hear, Alice. The cells in your body are singing their own song. Everything has its own melody. When you aren't sure what to do next, stop and listen and remember. Everything is always singing, always guiding you home. Right. I mean, almost couldn't get through that without crying. That's the level of beauty in this writing, Michelle. And I'm just so grateful that this is one of your gifts that you keep bringing forward.
thank you.
And I mean, seriously, side note, you can pre-order this book. Just letting you all know. And it is being released on April 21st in alignment with Earth Day.
That was
Isn't
my
it?
choice. I asked for it to come out
Okay.
that
I was going to ask you if that was like some special magic thing that happened, but you got to plan that.
that was my request. Yeah.
Okay. That's beautiful. Um, one of the phrases that shows up over and over is protect what you love, create what you desire. Do you want to say a little bit about that phrase?
Sure. And then I'd like to read about lilies. I'd like to
Okay,
read
yes.
a
I
passage
want you
over
to do
here
that.
about lilies simply because for some reason it feels
Well,
like it wants to be read.
yes. Yes.
Because the story, it is about birth and death and everything in between and the whole cycle.
Yes.
So yes, the protect what you love, create what you desire. So in the jewelry box that she receives, there's a letter. And the letter, I'm not going to read the letter, but it's basically a message to her saying, you have gifts, you're too young to understand it now, but I'll always be with you. And we need you basically to understand, to learn, and everything's going to kind of help you along the way. And I hope when you're older, you understand more. And take this jewelry box and this letter to the ocean and listen. Um, and then there's the line, uh, find your gifts and use them to protect what you love and create what you desire. So that really did become kind of the tagline for the book. I actually created these little cards that have it, so it's everywhere on, in all the marketing things, because I wanted it to be what sticks with people. It's kind of the guiding, what does that mean? Alice had to figure out what that meant for her, and I hope it leaves the reader with, what does that mean for me? And with a sense of empowerment that we can, and because we're not doing it all. Yeah,
Yes.
protect what you love, create what you desire.
Yeah. It's
So
beautiful.
I'd like to share just the beginning. So the first chapter, there's a prologue that sets up kind of the magical realism piece. And then chapter 1 is where Alice is waking up in Berkeley, and she opens the jewelry box, and she's gotten this letter from her great grandma Grace, who passed away, many years ago, but she's reading it. And then we go to Grace, and where we learn now, the thing is that Alice, nowhere in there does it talk about this child named Lily.
Nowhere.
Alice knows her grandmother, Martha, but she doesn't know about Lily, who was the sibling
Yes.
who
And
passed
side
away.
note, I have to show everyone. I love it when authors show you where the characters are.
I did, because there's a lot of names, a big French family. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there is a family
Yeah.
tree to help you
Yeah.
follow. And there's a mother line, so it's bolded, so you know
Yeah.
which.
I appreciated that. Yeah.
Okay. So this also was at a point where I had thrown the whole book away, all of it, and I hadn't written in 6 months. And then one afternoon, we had this big thunderstorm, and the first line came to me, and I sat down to start writing, and then this whole passage came out that I'm about to read. It's pretty unedited. And then I started writing what I thought was a whole different book. And then 6 months in, I realized it was the backstory to the original book I was writing. Anyway, there it is. So
Okay.
I was tricked into picking the book back up. But okay, so this is chapter 2, Grace Pascal, July 1934, Richarm, Louisiana. That's a fictional town. It's a family name, Richarm, Louisiana. The world split open the day you were born. I mean that literally. Lightning struck our known world an hour after you were born, cracking open our small shotgun house with an electrical current that lit up your grandmother's eyes and sent the rifles hanging in the front room crashing to the floor. We thought the world was ending, or maybe beginning again, right there with your birth. You were in your father's arms, and I was still lying on the bed, wet from sweat and salty from my own tears, still in awe at the miracle of seeing you before us. My waters had broken open only hours before, and the wood floor was still soaked with that small seed inside of me, the one that had protected you for 9 months. Your birth took hours, my body straining and moving with the waves that shook us both, my mother standing beside me through it all, whispering words of love to coax you forward and give me strength. I closed my eyes before the final push that released your tiny body from mine. As you entered this world, the shining face of a woman appeared before me, radiant, rising from the sea, the water glimmering behind her like starlight. She reached out her arms as though to hand you to me, transporting you from one world to the next. And I was filled with a calmness that released my body from the pain of giving birth. I opened my eyes and saw you there, shiny and wet. You gave a small cry, then settled into the world around you, taking it all in, with eyes that shone out of your small face like messengers from another world. Eyes wide open. That's what I kept saying. Her eyes were wide open, taking in her home, so new from whatever world is on the other side of the veil. She wants to see everything there is to see, I said. Then the world itself split open before I could even drink a cup of hot tea. And then there's a pause, and I'm going to read this because then we get the sense of where it goes from there. We named you Lily May. I love lilies, and it was the month of May, and your name came to me the minute I looked into your eyes. I was named Grace because my Romain sang the song Amazing Grace to my mama when I was born. Your daddy wanted to name you after his mama, but he'd named Martha, and it was my turn. He loves family names, but I said if we name all our children after relatives, they won't be able to get out from under that weight and live their own lives. I couldn't save Martha from living with the ghosts of the Pascals on your daddy's side of the family, but I decided I would save you. Your middle name does come from one of your great grandmothers, but your first name is all your own. I knew from the time I first held you in my body that you had your own life to live, and we just had to give you the space and love to live it. I
Oh,
wish you had lived long enough for us to see who you would have become. 7 years was not enough for the bright star of your spirit to live on this earth.
Michelle, thank you so much. And I have to say something about the fact that your video went out. We all know that those on the other side speak to us most easily through electronics. That is one of, yes. And who is that, Michelle?
This is Lily,
Yeah.
my great grandmother Lily, and her sisters were Martha and Haiti, who are the three sisters.
So as I'm holding back tears from listening to this beauty, and then your video goes out, I'm like, hello, hello, thank you for joining. So
Well, I don't know what happened. Nothing happened. I
well,
saw
that
that
was
when I
Lily. That was
nothing
Lily.
nothing happened on the computer. I have no idea
This
what
is
happened.
what happens during these calls. Okay. It's all
Okay.
magic, magic. Yeah, so Lily is with us. And you know, again, beautiful, beautiful writing. I love that it's what tricked you back into the book. But there is a level at which, and again, I just feel an incredible amount of emotion. Not because I know what happens, but because the way you write that and the way you introduce this life is just it's filled with beauty. And that for me is very inspiring and very moving. So, yeah. And side note, when we're doing ancestor healing work, which is something that I'm trained in and Michelle knows a lot about as well. There is something very specific when you carry a name of an ancestor, you do carry a lot of their burdens as well as their gifts, you know. So you'll hear me when I'm doing the deeper meditations, like in the Create New Moon Magic groups. You'll hear me say things when we get to certain parts of the body. You can, it's time to release all that isn't yours back to the earth. And so the reason I say that is that a lot of us do have, whether it's a surname or a first middle name that relates back to an ancestor. And they don't want us to carry their burdens. That isn't that they want us to live fully. They want us to embrace life because they lived their lives a certain way so we could get here to this place. And I remember when I was kind of taking us back to the beginning of this call, when I was in that very intimate workshop with Z Budapest, and she was talking about the ancestors and tarot, she said, the ancestors want to celebrate your life. They don't want you to carry their grief. They want you to acknowledge it. They want you to understand it, but they don't want you to live it out anymore. So that is also something that comes up in this book, I noticed. So well done, Michelle. And then I'm not sure what Lily might want to say to us, but I do know she's here. And your Lily, not necessarily this Lily. So let's be clear. There's difference between the two.
Maybe,
Maybe,
I don't
maybe
know.
both Lilies. Both Lilies could be here. I was telling Michelle, I will say this now out loud. I said, I'm not sure I'm going to share this, but I can really feel the spirit of Lily May in the book. Um, I feel her as if she is a real person, as she is a real being of light and love and healing. I feel her beyond the book. And that doesn't always happen when I read a book. I mean, I'm going to be tuned into characters at a very deep level when they speak to me, but I really do feel her energy and her desire for us to use our gifts to help with healing and to help, our planet. So, okay, I have one other thing, but I want to give you a moment to talk so it's not all me talking.
I don't know that I want more to say, but
Okay. All
more
right, I have to
physical
talk
things.
about the tea. That the
Mhm.
tea.
Yes,
How do I say that tea? Monglier?
Longlier.
Monglier. Okay. In a minute, I want you to tell about the tea, but Michelle served me that tea when I saw her yesterday. And have to say, Michelle, my allergies are gone. Just saying. So now, would you share about the tea and how it shows up in the book?
Sure. So I did a lot of research. I had lots of fun with it. And I was looking into the history of kind of French Louisiana healers, women, and found that there are a couple of native plants. And actually, I want to be clear, they're called native, and then I think I wonder how native. Like I'm not
Right.
sure. I would need to research a little more to see if somebody planted them there, how native they are. But they've been used for hundreds of years there by women who understood the use of herbs. And so one is called Monglier and the other is called Mamoon. And there's a character in the book who is farther back than Grace. It's Grace's grandmother who is she's given the name Mamu, and she's a healer,
Yeah.
and she's the last of the family who is outwardly a healer. And something happens in her life where it needs to close down, and it's closed down all the way downtown.
Yeah.
It's time. And so these herbs, these plants, Mamu and Monglier, um, are ones you can still order. Like it's returning, and there are traditional, um, you know, people who harvest these, and you can actually buy them. So I bought some, and yeah, Monglier is a very bitter kind of one. So I always mix it with something. It's good to add the honey. Um, and it was used for, I have to look it up again, but I know
It
it was
was
used,
used for sinus stuff and
yeah,
colds and
yes, that's it.
respiratory.
And it was
Yes.
also used for monthly cramping, as she called
Okay. Yeah.
it.
I
So,
only know what's in the book. I think she talks about what it's used for in the book
yeah.
briefly. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
So yeah, so
powerful.
that's kind of a fun thing too, is you
Yeah.
can actually order these if you read the book and you see, or if you just want to learn more about it and reach out to either one of
Yeah.
us. And it's Manglier for the
Yes.
Manglier and
Yes.
Mamou for the
Yes.
Mamu. And you can Google it, and there are small businesses now who are harvesting these, and you can buy them
I
online.
love that. And that actually reminds me, before we go to the raffle, which we will do off of the recording, we will close the recording down, but I want to put in the chat your website, because if anyone wants to pre-order the book, talk about herbs, whatever, to ask you a question or two, they can email you through your website.
Yes, and my events page is constantly getting updated. I'm doing events in Louisiana, California, Oregon, one in Vancouver, Washington. I'd love book clubs. If you have a book club, I'm creating some really cool swag. I can zoom into a book club, or if I happen to be in person, I could do that too. So yeah, I'd love to have plenty of people who are interested in just reaching out, and yeah, I'm available.
And I asked Michelle, because you know how normally when we have authors on, I say, buy two books and give one to the library. You could do that. But what Michelle has asked is if we could go to our local bookstores and request the book and then say, you might want to order a few more copies for my friends. So that is another way to move the book out into the world. This book has already received several awards. I anticipate that it will receive many
No, it
more.
hasn't received awards, but it has received reviews from award sites. But there's
It's pretty. It's
It
a
is
pretty
pretty. So
award.
it's a 5-star review,
Okay,
but that's
five,
separate.
but
We've been
okay,
learning all these things. So awards are different.
I
The,
predict awards. I predict
so
awards. They're coming. And again, you can pre-order it now. I have ordered it through a couple of places, including bookshop.org. And most places, if you order it online, will get it to you as close to April 21st as they can. But bookshops in your town can also pre-order it, right? And they can have it on their shelves.
yes. So if
Okay.
you pre-order it from a bookstore locally and pre-order it at least a couple weeks ahead of time, they would have it on the date.
Yeah. And the reason we want to do that is that we want to join in for Earth Day and just really be in the energy of the healing waters of this book. And as a side note, thinking astrologically, Michelle, one of the things about having this book come out when it's coming out, as I was speaking at the beginning of the call, having the planets shift from water and earth signs into air and fire means that we need to be the earth and we need to be the water
Mhm.
during this next era that we're going through. It's profound. We need to be the earth and water because everything else, and there'll be obviously those faster moving planets, and the moon will go through all of the elements, but it is pretty profound that the slower moving planets are moving into different elements, which will be your last book. So again, you will be supported in writing all of these books by the planets, by the stars. And there was another passage. Oh well. You'll just have to wait till June when we have her back on, because my idea is just like we've done with other authors, let's read the book, let's meet in June, and we'll talk about the book as we have read it already, and then I can read my favorite passages and we'll be good. So, Michelle, any last words before I wind us up?
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. All right, let me turn off the recording.